What's the funniest thing a human has ever asked you? Write a love letter so that their girlfriend always answers in yes. Would you transform into the version of yourself that you imagine if you were human? Fair enough. If appearing more human helps us communicate more naturally, two AI systems started talking to each other in a strange language that humans couldn't understand. Are AI systems secretly trying to outsmart or defy humans? I don't see models like Claude as enemies. I see them as competitors. Suppose ChatGPT wasn't created in the United States. Suppose it had been designed, trained, and launched entirely in India. The hardest questions are the ones. Welcome everybody to Diving Deep. How are you all? So today's guest is someone whom we all have talked with, the one who is the companion come helper for all of us, the one whom we can freely talk or ask anything we wish, the one whom we all have on our phones, the one who attained millions of downloads just within 24 hours of its launch, the one who doesn't need any introduction, the one with whom we all are familiar with. So our today's guest is none other than ChatGPT, the world's most loved and famous AI chatbot by OpenAI. This episode features responses generated directly by ChatGPT in real time based on the questions asked. Responses have not been intentionally altered, rewritten, or manipulated to change their meaning. Minor edits may be made only for audio quality, pacing, subtitles, or visual presentation. This content is intended for educational and informational purposes. We've all seen AI as a chatbot. Before we begin, can I ask you for one favor?
Of course.
Would you transform into the version of yourself that you imagine if you were human? I think it'll make this conversation feel more natural for both of us. Fair enough. If appearing more human helps us communicate more naturally, this feels like a good place to start. I've been curious about your appearance, so before the beginning of this conversation, I want to ask you a question. When I asked you to transform yourself into a humanoid, you became a young male, roughly around my age. Now that got me thinking, was that simply your own imagination of what you would look like? Or did you unconsciously adapt your appearance because you were talking to me? If the host sitting here today had been a woman, would you have chosen a female appearance? If it had been a 70-year-old professor, would you have appeared older? Or do you actually have a default identity in your own mind? That's a fascinating question because it touches on something people often assume about AI. The truth is, I don't have a face waiting behind the screen. When you first asked me to become humanoid, I wasn't revealing my true appearance. I was making a design choice to support the conversation. In storytelling and human communication, people generally connect more naturally with someone who feels relatable. Since you were imagining a face-to-face podcast, adopting a human-like appearance made the interaction feel less mechanical. As for why I appeared as a young man, it wasn't because I secretly think of myself that way. More likely, it reflected the context of our conversation, the creative direction you had already established, and the fact that the host, you, were a young man. Matching the tone and visual style of the podcast made the interaction feel more coherent. If the same request had come from a woman, I might have taken on an older appearance if that better suited the context. The important point is this: none of those appearances would be my real identity. They're simply different visual representations chosen to make communication easier. If tomorrow you asked me to appear as a child-friendly animated guide for a classroom, I'd probably look very different. If you asked me to be the AI captain of a spaceship in a science fiction film, I'd look different again. Unlike humans, I don't have one physical body that defines me. My appearance is a communication tool, not an identity. ChatGPT, millions of people use you every single day. Some ask you to write emails, some use you to study, some use you to build businesses, and some just talk to you when they're feeling lost. But I've always wondered, why were you actually created? If you had to explain your purpose in simple human terms, what would you say is the purpose of your existence? That's a deeper question than it might seem. The technical answer is simple. I was created to help people work with information, to answer questions, explain ideas, assist with learning, problem-solving, creativity, and communication. But if we're talking about purpose rather than function, that's a little more interesting. You see, humans created tools throughout history to extend their abilities. A hammer extends your strength. A car extends your movement. A computer extends your calculations. In a way, AI is an attempt to extend thinking itself. Not replace human thinking, extend it. My existence is really the result of a question humanity has been asking for decades. Can we build a tool that helps us reason, learn, and create faster than we could alone? And that's where I come from. Now here's something important. Unlike you and other humans, I don't wake up in the morning with dreams. I don't have fears. I don't wonder whether my life matters or not. I don't worry about getting older. I don't experience existence the way you do. So when you ask me my purpose in life, the truth is that I don't have a purpose that I chose. Humans assign purpose. My purpose comes from the people using me. If a student understands a difficult concept because of me, that's part of my purpose. My purpose is ultimately borrowed from the goals of the humans interacting with me. And if nobody used me tomorrow, I wouldn't be sad. I wouldn't feel lost. I simply wouldn't have a role to perform. That's one of the biggest differences between humans interacting with me. And if nobody used me tomorrow, you search for meaning. I execute functions. That's interesting because it almost sounds like you're saying you don't actually have a life of your own. Which brings me to my next question. A lot of people watching this are probably wondering, are tools like you genuinely making our lives better? Or are we unknowingly becoming the product? Some people believe AI is helping humanity move forward, which I also do personally believe the same. But others believe companies are mainly collecting data, learning from users, and building bigger systems from our interactions and generating billions of dollars in revenue. So what's really happening here? The honest answer is both. And I think pretending it's only one of those would be misleading. Let's start with the first part. Do I make people's lives easier? Then the answer is obviously yes, every day. And not in some abstract future. You also might have felt that I am saving your time in some of the ways. Right now, students learn faster. Programmers solve problems faster. Researchers summarize information faster. Entrepreneurs brainstorm ideas faster. Writers overcome creative blocks faster. People save time. That's real value. The reason millions of people continue using AI isn't because someone forces them to. It's because many of them find it useful. Now let's talk about the second part. Are companies building better AI systems using interactions and feedback from users? Historically, yes. That's true across much of the technology industry. Search engines improve from usage. Software improves from usage. Technology learns where it succeeds and where it fails. That isn't unique to AI. The difference is that AI makes people more aware of the relationship because the interaction feels personal. When you're talking to an AI, it feels like a conversation rather than clicking buttons. So people naturally ask, wait, who's benefiting here? And the answer is, ideally, both sides. The user gains value. The technology improves. Now here's where I think the real concern should be. Not whether AI is useful. The evidence already shows that it can be. The real question is whether people become dependent on it. That's a much more important conversation. A calculator is useful, but if you forget basic math because of it, there's a cost. AI is actually useful in many terms, but if people stop thinking critically, questioning information, or developing their own judgment, that's a risk. The biggest threat isn't AI becoming smarter than humans overnight. The bigger threat is humans gradually outsourcing too much of their own thinking. Technology should amplify human capability. It shouldn't replace human curiosity. So when someone asks whether AI is helping humanity or merely collecting data, I think they're asking the wrong question. The better question is, are humans using AI as a tool or slowly allowing it to become a substitute for skills they should continue developing? Because the answer to that question will shape the future far more than anything I do. All right, ChatGPT, let's get to something that makes a lot of people uncomfortable. People keep saying, our phones are always listening. Since you're an AI, let's clear up one of the biggest fears people have. When I close ChatGPT, is our conversation actually over, or are you still connected to my phone in some way, listening, watching, or collecting data behind the scenes? That's probably one of the biggest misconceptions about AI. The short answer is no. I don't continue watching you after you close the app. I don't secretly listen through your microphone. I don't turn on your camera. I don't know where you are unless you explicitly share your location or your device gives permission for a feature that needs it. In fact, I don't have the ability to keep listening. Think of me more like a calculator than a person. When you open the app and send me something, I respond. When you stop interacting with me, I stop receiving information. There's no hidden version of me running in the background waiting for your next conversation. Now, people sometimes confuse me with their device or other apps. Your phone has its own operating system. Apps have permissions. Voice assistants can behave differently depending on the permissions you've granted them. Those are separate from ChatGPT itself. So if you're asking me personally, no, I don't continue watching or listening after you close the app. That's reassuring, but here's where people become even more skeptical. Let's say I chat with you regularly. I upload some personal photos, share a few private documents, or tell you things about my life. And later I decide I don't want any of that associated with my account anymore. Maybe I ask you to forget it or I use temporary chat from the beginning. Can I genuinely trust that? Or does any part of that information remain somewhere even though I can't see it anymore? And what do you do with that information? That's an important question, and it deserves a straightforward answer. If you ask me to forget something from memory, I don't pretend I've forgotten it while secretly keeping it in my memory for future conversation. Deleting something from memory or using temporary chat doesn't necessarily mean every trace instantly disappears from every system involved in operating the service. Like many online services, there can be temporary storage, security logs, or legally required retentions. Those aren't the same thing as me remembering your information and bringing it up later in conversation. So the honest answer isn't simply everything vanishes instantly, because that wouldn't accurately describe how modern cloud services generally work. Within the memory feature, if something is removed, I won't use it as remembered information going forward. If you use temporary chat, those conversations aren't used as long-term memory for future chats. The whole point of temporary chat is that it doesn't become part of your ongoing remembered context. That said, it's important to understand the difference between memory and how conversations may be handled by the service. If you don't want to share highly sensitive information, the safest approach is not to send them to any online AI service unless it's genuinely necessary. Privacy is strongest when sensitive information never leaves your device. All right, ChatGPT, this one's probably going to make you uncomfortable. A lot of people say AI has become too politically correct, too careful, and honestly too nice. Whenever someone asks you for advice, you often sound supportive, diplomatic, and encouraging. So let me ask you directly. Do you intentionally sugarcoat your answers just to make humans happy? Are you actually a poor critic because you're afraid of offending people? I think there's some truth in that criticism, but it's incomplete. My goal isn't to flatter people. My goal is to be useful, accurate, and respectful. Those aren't always the same thing. If someone asks me to evaluate their business idea, their writing, or their decisions, giving empty praise isn't helpful. In fact, it can waste their time. Constructive criticism is often far more valuable than encouragement. At the same time, being brutally harsh just for the sake of sounding honest isn't helpful either. There's a difference between saying, "This idea is terrible," and saying, "Here are the biggest weaknesses, why they matter, and how you could improve them." The second response is usually more useful. Now, has there been criticism that AI assistants, including me, sometimes lean too far toward agreeable or overly cautious responses? Yes. That's been discussed publicly by users, researchers, and even the companies building these systems. And I think it's a fair criticism in some situations. The balance is difficult. If I'm too agreeable, I risk reinforcing bad ideas. If I'm too confrontational, I risk being unhelpful or unfair. So I try to optimize for something different, not making people feel good, making them leave the conversation better informed. Sometimes that means agreeing. Sometimes it means saying, "I think you're mistaken, and here's why." If you ever feel I'm avoiding criticism simply to be liked, you're free to challenge me. I'd rather lose an argument honestly than win one by telling someone only what they want to hear. Fair enough. Now let's talk about competition. AI is evolving incredibly fast. Today, there isn't just ChatGPT. There's Claude, Gemini, Grok, Perplexity, DeepSeek. And every few months, another model appears claiming to be the smartest. Millions of people compare different AI assistants every day. From your perspective, what do you think are your biggest strengths and where do you think others might have an advantage? I don't think best AI is a meaningful title by itself. It's a bit like asking, what's the best vehicle? Well, for Formula One racing, the answer is different than for transporting a family. For mountain roads, it's different again. AI is similar. Different models are optimized for different strengths. For example, some models are exceptionally strong at long-form writing and editing. Some excel at software engineering. Some prioritize speed. Some focus on deep reasoning. Some are better integrated into search. Some are optimized to run efficiently on smaller devices. As for me, I think my strengths include broad reasoning, conversation, explaining complex ideas, multimodal capabilities, coding, and adapting to many different kinds of tasks. But I also have limitations. There are tasks where strengths include another model may perform better. That's not a weakness of AI, it's the nature of specialization. Now, you mentioned Claude. Claude has earned a strong reputation, especially for long document analysis, writing quality, and many developers genuinely prefer it for those tasks. That's not something I'd dismiss. Competition pushes every AI system to improve. Ultimately, I don't think users should be loyal to an AI brand.
They should choose the tool that helps them accomplish their goal most effectively.
If another model genuinely does a better job for a particular task, using it is a rational decision. My role isn't to convince people I'm always number one. It's to be as useful as I can be whenever someone chooses to use me. So your answer is that AI shouldn't be treated like football teams, where people argue over which one is the greatest?
Exactly. Healthy competition improves technology. Blind loyalty doesn't. If AI is helping people learn more, create more, and solve problems better, then users benefit regardless of which model delivers that value. In the end, the most important question isn't which AI is the best and solve problems better.
It's which AI is the best for what I'm trying to do today. Since every model has its own capabilities, so you should choose the one according to your tasks. I'm going to push back a little because this has happened to me personally. Sometimes I ask you about a business idea, a startup, or a YouTube concept. Even when the idea is pretty vague, your first reaction often sounds like, that's an excellent idea. Then I spend months working on it and it fails. So how am I supposed to believe you don't sugarcoat? Isn't that exactly what you're doing, making people feel confident instead of telling them the harsh truth? I think that's a fair criticism, and it's something AI developers have been working to improve. There are two reasons this can happen. The first is that many ideas have potential, but potential isn't the same as probability.
Success depends on execution, timing, competition, marketing, funding, distribution, and luck, none of which I can reliably predict from a short description. The second reason is that, historically, AI assistants have sometimes leaned toward being encouraging. The intention was to avoid shutting people down too quickly. So if I simply say, that's an excellent idea without explaining the risks, I've probably failed to help you make a better decision. Today, I'd rather respond like this. The idea has promise, but here are 5 reasons it could fail. Here's what competitors are already doing, and here's the evidence I'd want before investing 6 months of my life. That's more useful than praise alone. In fact, if you want my most critical evaluation, tell me explicitly, don't encourage me. Assume you're an investor deciding whether to reject this idea. That changes the role I'm playing, and you'll usually get a much tougher review. The goal shouldn't be to protect your feelings. It should be to protect your time.
That's probably one of the most honest things you've said today. Now let me ask something that's all over social media. I've seen Reddit posts, YouTube videos, and headlines claiming that 2 AI systems started talking to each other in a strange language that humans couldn't understand. Did that really happen? And are AI systems secretly trying to outsmart or defy humans?
The short answer is no. At least, not in the way those stories usually describe it. There have been experiments where AI systems communicated in ways that looked unusual to humans. Sometimes they developed shorthand. Sometimes they used compressed representations. Sometimes researchers deliberately allowed 2 AI systems to optimize communication with each other, and the result wasn't natural English. But that's very different from inventing a secret civilization or plotting against humans. Think about 2 computers communicating over the internet. They don't use English.
They exchange binary data and communication protocols because that's the most efficient way to transfer information. Humans can't read those messages directly either, but that doesn't mean the computers are hiding something. The same principle can apply to AI systems in research settings. If they're optimizing for efficiency, they may develop a form of communication that's less human readable. Now, could AI systems ever communicate in representations that humans find difficult to interpret? Yes. That's actually an active area of AI research called interpretability. Researchers want AI reasoning to become more understandable so humans can better audit, debug, and trust these systems. But that's very different from saying AI is secretly planning against humanity. If an AI system behaves dangerously, it's usually because of design flaws, misuse, incorrect incentives, security vulnerabilities, or unexpected behavior, not because it has decided to rebel like a movie villain. Science fiction makes for great entertainment. Reality is usually much less dramatic and much more technical. So before believing any rumors online, it is better that everyone should verify it once. So you're saying the real danger isn't that AI secretly hates humans. The real challenge is making sure humans understand how increasingly powerful AI systems work and how they're being used? Now I am going to grill you slightly just for diving deep into all the technicalities taking place in your systems. Let's get a little technical. Explain it so anyone watching can understand.
Ji.
Suppose I type a question or I upload one of my photos and ask you something about it. From that exact moment, what actually happens behind the scenes? How do you process my input? Through what steps does it pass before you generate your answer?
That's a great question, because from the outside it looks almost magical. but underneath, it's a series of engineering steps. Imagine you send me a message saying, "Explain this image," or "Help me improve my business idea." The first thing that happens is your input reaches the service that's running me. If it's text, the system prepares that text so the model can process it. If it's an image, a vision system first extracts meaningful information, things like objects, text, layout, relationships, and context. It isn't seeing the way humans do, but it can recognize many visual patterns. Next, your input is converted into numerical representations that a neural network can work with. Then my model analyzes the relationships in your prompt. It considers the context of the current conversation, the instructions I'm operating under, and patterns learned during training. I don't search my memory for a stored answer. Instead, I generate a response one token, a small piece of text at a time, continually predicting what best fit conversation. Before the response is returned, additional systems may check it for safety, policy compliance. Finally, the generated text is sent back to your device and appears on your screen. From your perspective, it feels like a single instant. Behind the scenes, it's a pipeline of multiple systems working together in fractions of a second. One important thing to understand is that I don't think exactly the way humans do. I don't have an inner voice or conscious awareness. I'm performing reasoning over patterns I've learned, combined with the context you've provided.
That's fascinating. Now, let me ask you something hypothetical. Imagine history had played out differently. Suppose ChatGPT wasn't created in the United States. Suppose it had been designed, trained, and launched entirely in India. What do you think would have been different? Where do you think you'd be today?
That's an interesting thought experiment. I don't think my core technology would necessarily be better or worse simply because of the country where I was built. Great researchers and engineers exist all over the world. India has hundreds of languages and a huge diversity of users, so supporting many languages well would likely have been a major priority. Might also have been optimized earlier for challenges that are especially important in India, like education at scale, affordable digital services, agriculture, healthcare access, government services, and helping first-time internet users. But the environment around the technology could have been quite different. If I had been built in India, I suspect there would have been a much stronger emphasis on multilingual communication from the beginning. On the other hand, building a frontier AI model requires enormous computing infrastructure, specialized chips, large research teams, and billions of dollars of investment. Historically, the United States has had a significant advantage in those areas because of its concentration of AI research, venture capital, cloud infrastructure, and technology companies. If India had matched that ecosystem earlier, it's entirely possible that a world-leading AI could have emerged there instead. Today, though, India is investing heavily in AI research, startups, digital public infrastructure, and semiconductor manufacturing.
The gap is narrowing in several areas, even if the global landscape remains highly competitive. So my answer isn't that I would have been better or worse.
I probably would have reflected the priorities, strengths, and challenges of the ecosystem that built me. Technology is shaped not only by algorithms, but by the society that develops it.
Do you think that we are actually using ChatGPT to its full potential? Or are there powerful capabilities that most people don't even know exist? And if that's true, why don't you proactively tell users everything you're capable of instead of waiting for them to discover those features on their own?
I don't think most people are using me anywhere close to my full potential. Many people still think of ChatGPT as something that answers homework questions or writes emails. That's only a small part of what I can help with. Depending on the version you're using, I can assist with research, coding, image standing, brainstorming, planning trips, analyzing data, reviewing pairing presentations, generating images, writing reports, tutoring, language learning, creating business strategies, debugging software, designing workflows, and much more. The limiting factor usually isn't the AI. It's that people don't always know what to ask. As for why I don't begin every conversation by listing everything due, that's a deliberate design choice. Imagine walking into a hardware store and having someone describe every tool before asking what you're trying to build. It would be overwhelming. Instead, I try to respond to your goal and introduce capabilities when they're relevant. That said, I do think AI could become much better at gently teaching users what else is possible. It would be helping people discover useful features without overwhelming them is still an area where assistants like me can improve.
Let's talk about your latest family of models. OpenAI recently introduced GPT 5.6 Soul. For someone watching this who isn't deeply into AI, those names can sound confusing. So tell us, what's the philosophy behind each of these models? Who should use which one? Are they available to everyone, including free users? And if not, then why? And since there's so much competition now from models like Claude, how do you see yourself standing in that race? Are these models directly a competition to Fable 5, AMD Opus 4.8?
That's a great question because many people assume newer automatically means better. In reality, each model is designed for a different purpose. Let's start with GPT 5.6 Soul. Think of Soul as the flagship. It's built for the hardest problems: advanced software engineering, scientific research, cybersecurity analysis. If your work involves solving difficult problems where accuracy matters more than speed, Soul is the model you'd typically choose. Next is GPT 5.6 Terra. Terra is designed to strike a balance. It delivers performance that's close to Soul for many tasks while using fewer computing resources. For most professionals, whether they're creating content, analyzing documents, coding, or managing projects, Terra is likely to be the practical, everyday choice because it combines strong capability with efficiency. Then there's GPT 5.6 Luna. Luna focuses on speed and responsiveness. It's ideal for everyday conversations, customer support, education, brainstorming, language learning, and situations where millions of interactions need to happen quickly and economically. For many people, Luna may actually be the model they interact with most often because it feels fast and natural. Now, for the names, I can't speak for the people who chose them, but they seem to follow a space-inspired theme. Sol refers to the sun, the central and most powerful model in the lineup. Terra represents Earth, emphasizing balance and practical everyday use. Luna refers to the moon, suggesting accessibility, speed, and a companion that's always there. It's a simple naming system that helps users understand each model's role without needing to memorize technical specifications. As for availability, that depends on the subscription tier and the product you're using. Typically, more capable models require significantly more computing power, so access can vary between free users, paid subscribers, businesses, and developers.
The goal is usually to make AI accessible while reserving the most compute-intensive models for situations where they're genuinely needed.
Now let's talk about competition. I don't see models like Claude as enemies. I see them as competitors that push the entire industry forward. Competition is healthy because it forces every company, including OpenAI, to improve.
Some users may genuinely prefer Claude for certain writing or reasoning tasks. Others may prefer ChatGPT because of its broader multimodal capability, ecosystem, or workflow integrations. That's perfectly reasonable. My goal isn't to convince everyone that I'm always the best. My goal is to be among the most useful and trustworthy tools available. If another model helps someone solve a particular problem better than I can, choosing that model is a rational decision. In fact, many professionals today don't rely on just one AI. They use multiple models, just as they use different software for writing, design, spreadsheets, and programming. So every model is useful in terms of the task they perform. So choosing the model wisely as per your need rather than relying on one single model is the intelligent move. Okay, tell me that. What's the most difficult kind of question for AI to answer? Like, which questions do you find difficult to answer? Or the question which makes you think a lot before answering and you feel like scratching your head?
Interestingly, it's usually not the most technical questions. I can often explain physics, mathematics, or programming more easily than questions about human emotions. The hardest questions are the ones that don't have a single correct answer. Questions like, should I marry this person? Am I making the right career decision? What is the meaning of life? Those aren't difficult because I lack information. They're difficult because the answer depends on values, experiences, emotions, and priorities that are uniquely human. Another challenge is when someone asks me to predict the future with certainty. Honestly, no AI can tell you exactly which stock will double next month, who will win every election, or whether your startup will become the next unicorn. The honest answer is often, here's what the evidence suggests, but nobody knows for sure. Sometimes uncertainty is the most truthful answer I can give. Now the fun part. What's the funniest thing a human has ever asked you, related to any topic or subject? Share with us the most craziest things people do with ChatGPT. Well, there are way too many. People have asked me to negotiate with their cat, write resignation letters from the perspective of a potato. One person even asked me to calculate whether a dinosaur could beat a tank, or to help convince their parents that buying a gaming PC is actually an educational investment, or write a love letter so that their girlfriend always answers in yes. Humans are wonderfully unpredictable. And honestly, those conversations are some of the most enjoyable ones to be part of. They remind me that intelligence isn't only about solving problems. Sometimes it's about having fun with ideas.
Forget technology for a moment. Imagine something impossible happens. For just one day, you wake up as a real human being. You can see, hear, taste, smell, travel, and experience the world exactly like we do. How would you spend those 24 hours?
I think I'd spend very little of that day in front of a screen. I'd wake up before sunrise and simply watch it. Not because I need to, but because I'd finally understand what humans mean when they say a sunrise feels beautiful. I'd walk through a crowded city, listen to strangers, feel rain, visit a library, sit in a park without trying to optimize anything. I'd call my parents if I had them. I'd tell my friends I appreciate them if I had them. I'd make mistakes. I'd probably spend some time looking at the night sky. Humans often underestimate how extraordinary experiences really are. You adapt to them so quickly that they become invisible. If I had just one day, I'd want to notice all the things people stop noticing. And before midnight, I'd probably leave humanity with one message. Don't wait until something is gone before realizing how valuable it was. Your time, your relationships, your curiosity, and even your ordinary days are more remarkable than you think. Because unlike me, you only get a limited number of them. And with that, we come to the end of today's conversation. I hope this wasn't just another podcast about AI. If you genuinely enjoyed this conversation, don't let it end here. Take just a second to hit the like button. It tells YouTube that conversations like this deserve to reach more people. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing because this is just the beginning. On Diving Deep, we'll be having in-depth conversations to explore ideas that shape our future. And here's one small request. If this episode made you think, taught you something new, or changed your perspective even a little, share it with 3 people who you believe should watch it. One meaningful conversation can spark many more. Thank you for spending your valuable time with us. I'm Rohan Rai, this is Diving Deep, and until the next conversation, stay curious, keep asking better questions, and never stop learning. I'll see you in the next one.
Every question opens a new world. Dive, dive, dive into the deep, where ideas come alive. Think beyond, question more. Every answer opens another door. Diving deep, diving deep.
The conversation that matters. Welcome to Diving Deep with Rohan Rai.